Hi, everyone, and welcome to the recording of a conference paper that I presented in 2018 at the Critical Finance Conference in the University of Gothenburg in Sweden. So, the title of my paper was Finance Art and the Financialization of the Economy, a case study of the finance art installation, The Glitter of a Flash Crash, which I had presented in an art gallery in Galway, and I've discussed in every conference paper I've given. And at that stage, I had never really focused on that one in particular. So um, that was like the topic of financialization just um, was just like more relevant for that artwork. So my name is Stephanie Dosu. I am the co-founder of the Finance Art Institute. I hold a PhD in computer science from Trinity College Dublin, and my research is a practice-based research on finance art, which is investigating the use of finance's own methods and tools in art production. So, finance art is a term I have come up with, and which is modeled on the term bioart, while bioart appropriates the techniques and methods of biotechnologies to remap that territory. Finance art appropriates the methods and techniques of finance to remap our relationship to the territory of finance and the territory itself. This research comes out of the experience and knowledge I have built and reflected upon over the last 20 years. At the time of that conference paper's presentation in 2018, now it's more like 25 years working in finance and technology inside the financial industry and bringing it to my artistic practice. My research is really based on my work as a finance practitioner in technology and my professional encounters with financial innovation and technologies. This paper explores the strategies used by global finance and the tactics employed by finance art in relation to the process of financialization of the world economy, which has been increasing since the early 1980s. It also explores how it can help make this process, which is mainly happening at an abstract, technological, and machinic level, back to human scale of sensations. Finance art operates beyond representation. By appropriating finance's own methods, it has an inside view into the field of finance. It does not represent finance, it becomes finance. It even directly connects to live global financial systems in certain cases. It functions at an asignifying level and brings a discipline which is typically intellectual down to a sensorial experience. It invites people to engage with this subject in a different way. Deleuze writes that the vocation of all non representational art is to make visible or perceptible forces that would otherwise remain invisible or imperceptible. Finance art operates in this manner. Gerald Epstein in um, In Introduction, Financialization and the World Economy, writes that the main transformations the world economy has gone through are the rise of neoliberalism, globalization, and financialization. He defines the process of financialization as the increasing role of financial motives, financial markets, financial actors, and financial institutions in the operation of the domestic and international economies. And we could even expand it to everyday life, uh, the expansion of finance in everything in life, and finance as the main measure in everything in life, really. Everything is compared to the financial values, the financial impact, like in a very one dimensional view of the world, which is solely focused on financial and monetary aspects, and really shows like that this approach is extremely limited, and we can see the impact it has had on the rest of the world and all the other dimensions of value, such as the environment, the mental, like when anything is being evaluated in a corporate environment or in a political environment, in most environments around the world since the 1980s, everything is being translated into a financial and monetary scale. And the other dimensions are not taken into consideration, or they haven't been, and they are being actually reintegrated at the moment with ESG and sustainable finance, when finally we realize that, a project or an investment is not only, or should not only be measured in terms of its impact, only in terms of its financial return or return on investment, but also on its impact it has on the environment through pollution, climate change, governance, fraud, um, security of society, mental health, the social and society impact on communities, etc., etc., etc. Financialization has that one dimensional scale of value based on money and financial value. So, over the last 40 years, the financial economy, which is another impact of this financialization, has grown several times faster than the real economy to become a large part of the world economy. So, the real economy in this context is manufacturing and services, anything like services other than the financial industry, which is also seen as part of the service industry. But in this case, anything that is not finance has been growing much slower than the financial economy. The role of financial innovation, in particular, the increased use of securitization and shadow banking, as well as the role of technology such as networking, increasing speed, favorizing practices such as high frequency trading and algorithmic trading more generally, have been key in the expansion of the process of financialization and in adding complexity, secrecy, and obscurity in global finance. These make the financialization process go more easily undetected or less obvious to the general public, while it is very evident in the resulting inequalities in everyday life. Institutions such as financial regulators, central banks, corporations, and the financial services industry more generally, as well as traditional financial media and press, employ strategies to define the territory of finance. These strategies put the emphasis on complexity, make use of jargon and abstraction, provoking citizens' disengagement. Currently, banks, financial exchanges, and institutions such as hedge funds have an unfair advantage in financial market transactions through their control of data, technology, communication infrastructure, and information. Information asymmetry is epitomized in markets such as dark pools, where high frequency trading companies hold information that institutional, private, and individual investors do not have and act as parasites in those markets by getting between the investors and the sellers, uh, by buying and selling very quickly and making a profit when the two parties could have just met directly within their own transactions without having to pay this intermediary, which is really a parasite. These strategies ensure citizens do not engage with these market practices directly, and as such have no say or input into any regulations needed or the future directions these markets should take. These strategies ensure most citizens are kept out of the debate, even though it is their pensions or their savings which are invested through these operations. So, this is photomontage by Andres Koski, which represents finance or financial markets and traders in the 1990s. This is in the Tate Modern in London, in the museum there. And and it really represents the fascination of the traders from the 80s and the 90s, and their secret language made of gestures that look like a social dance and that could move millions in seconds. However, things have changed a lot since then, and these buildings have been deserted. Most exchanges are now virtualized programs sitting on a computer, located in data centers away from city centers. These days, algorithmic robots do most of the trading in these new products and in a lot of the old products too, automatically without human interventions. Humans have been involved, of course, in their programming, in the strategy that are being run. However, the execution of those trades are carried out by those robots. The products traded and their prices are not attached to the underlying companies and their performance in the real economy, especially in terms of derivatives, which are derived from stocks and mortgages, and derivatives that are derivative of derivative of derivative with a multiple level of abstraction. With the dematerialization of finance and financial instruments, the products traded on exchanges and off exchange are numbers recorded on a computer that are dictated by offer and demand on the markets rather than linked to any company's productivity or information or actually sometimes it is information, very quick information, that can destabilize the value of an asset, of an instrument. As I said, financial instruments are also created and derived from other products. And the process of securitization is a way to derive and create new financial instruments to be traded on virtual exchanges. Securitization is based on complex and black box models that derive new instruments from other products. It has been a way to move assets off balance sheet and to shift the risk related to underlying assets. So that's why we see a lot of it in mortgages, where instead of keeping mortgages on their balance sheets, banks, through the process of securitization, can create securities and sell them off. Um, these days, and especially after the financial crisis of 2007, 2008, a lot of the risk is kept by the originator of the securities, whereas at the time, the risk was carried with the securities, which meant that the institutions who had bought them carried the risk, um, all of the risk that was associated with them, and especially a level of risk that they could not measure because they didn't even know what was underlying the securities that they had bought. The complexity introduced through financial innovation ensures regulation is far behind and citizens are excluded. Most people still hold models of finance as human traders interacting in a pit, as in Gursky's photomontage we've just seen. These obsolete models ensure that citizens are not involved or engaged in the discussion on the future of markets, even though these have a direct impact on their lives, especially in times of crisis. Michel de Certeau wrote in The Practice of Everyday Life, by contrast with a strategy, a tactic is a calculated action determined by the absence of a proper locus. No delimitation of an exteriority then provides it with the condition necessary for autonomy. The space of a tactic is the space of the other. Thus, it must play on and with a terrain imposed on it and organized by the law of a foreign power. It operates in isolated actions, blow by blow. It takes advantage of opportunities and depends on them, being without any base where it could stockpile its winnings, build up its own position, and plan raids. It must vigilantly make use of the cracks that particular conjunctions open in the surveillance of the proprietary powers. It poaches in them, it creates surprises in them, it can be where it is least expected. It is a guileful ruse. Finance might appear abstract and complex. Its connections with everyday life have become invisible through the multiple levels of abstractions that have been created between commodities and financial instruments through financial innovation. To counteract the strategies employed by financial institutions and encourage people's engagement with global finance, finance art tactically attempts to reconnect the multiple levels of complexity and abstractions between the global finance system and everyday life. Finance art attempts to achieve this through the creation of new assemblage and agencement that bring finance abstract appearance back into an actual sensorial, visible and touchable plane. So what does finance art do? Finance art is composed of the art practices and theories that use finance frameworks, methodologies, tools, technologies, and practices to produce art. The use of those tools that have been developed and are used by the financial world is what makes an art piece or theory finance art. It functions at an asignifying level and brings a discipline which is typically intellectual down to a sensorial experience. It invites people to engage with this subject in a different way. These are a few examples of finance artworks. This is a photo of my installation called The Glitter of a Flash Crash. And it was presented as part of the Materiality exhibition in the Quadrangle Art Gallery in NUI Galway. It is based on a series of data visualizations, animation that I've created using a data set of second data for several stocks, which are part of the Dow Jones Industrial Average Index during the first flash crash, which happened on the 6th of May 2010 at 2:45 p.m. During this flash crash, the US stock markets, like few of them, plunged and recovered by 6% in 3 minutes. This flash crash and all the subsequent ones are symptoms of malfunctions in global markets, and they are happening more and more frequently. I will talk a bit more about it later in the context of financialization. These are other examples of finance artworks by the French art collective RYBN, whose interventions focused on financial markets. As at the time I presented this conference paper, um, as part of their anti-data mining project, they had multiple um, artworks, um, which were a critique of the algorithmic trading practice mostly, and played with different type of algorithms. They had ADM8, which was trading, which was basically an algo trader robot that they started in 2008. And then they made a natal birth chart and sonification based on the flash crash data as well. So finance art moves and displaces finance from its usual milieu, which is secretive and elitist and restricted to, people from the financial industry, into an artistic milieu which is more open and inviting, even though it is quite clear that it can be elitist as well, since art is a privileged um, field as well, but it is a bit more democratic, especially in societies where art is being approached by schools, within schools, by children, and is more available to the wider public. The main operations which are performed by finance art are to reconnect the multiple levels of abstraction back to everyday life, as well as to bring operations that happen at a machinic scale back to human perception scale. In terms of financialization, finance art attempts to make visible the operations that contribute to the financialization of the economy and raise awareness on these processes, the effects they have, and their impact on people's lives. It attempts to engage citizens with the practices of global finance and help them question those. As previously mentioned, the finance art installation, The Glitter of a Flash Crash, which I am using here as a case study, is based on a series of data visualization animations. And these were projected onto a wall sculpture, which was also designed based on 3D visualization of financial market data. This piece is using typical techniques used by finance, data visualization, and modeling. However, it creates an experience where the audience feels the financial data through their senses rather than through an intellectual understanding or analysis. This was an immersive experience using projection mapping techniques. While the visual and immersive um, finance art installation was very important in providing a new point of entry into the world of global finance and financial markets. The installation's title, the artist's statement, and the text accompanying the sensorial experience were key elements to invite the audience in engaging with these topics and in raising awareness of processes and forces at play in financial markets and global finance at large, including the process of financialization, securitization, and trading practices such as high frequency trading and algorithmic trading more generally. The complexity of the financial system is often invoked as a barrier for citizens to be involved. The confusing communication and lack of transparency results in a lack of interest from citizens who are not engaged when obscure numbers, complex models, mathematical formulas, or jargon are presented to them. I believe that finance art can raise the general public's level of interest and awareness in finance practices and help them engage in the conversation on the future of global finance. The glitter of a flash crash installation attempts to do so and employs tactical actions to try and create new points of entry. These tactics include the appropriation of finance industry tools, techniques, and methods through data visualization and modeling techniques used for a different purpose than actual trading or profit making. The main operation of the glitter of a flash crash is to facilitate the travel between the levels of abstractions which are put in place between finance and the impact it has on immediate reality, which is part of the financialization process, as well as the importance of citizen engagement and awareness on this process, which can go undetected but has very obvious and real consequences on people's everyday life. So, thank you for watching this conference paper series on the conference papers I have presented over the last 7 years. And so, as mentioned in some of the other conference papers, I will currently working on an online exhibition of those artworks that I've been working on, and some of them I've presented, some of them are part of my research and my PhD, but were not presented in a curated environment. So they will be available on in this online exhibition over the next few weeks. Thank you for listening and bye.